We are messengers with 1,000 times. You're on 94.9. It is 14 minutes past 4 and it's Tuesday afternoon. That means it's time for Creation Ministries International. And today we have Dr. John in the studio. Good afternoon, Dr. John.
Good afternoon, Mick.
It's awesome to have you, Dr. John. Of course, you are a doctor of people. You worked on humans. And today we're going to be talking a bit about a human, a prehistoric human. We saw a news article, which now I've noticed there's about 100 of them. There's so many people are talking about this. A prehistoric woman. They found some bones in a cave, and now they've reconstructed the woman. But the stories are all saying that they've pretty much worked out exactly how she lived and what she looked like and colour of skin, colour of eyes, all these things, which I kind of thought was amazing.
It is, Mick, actually, and of course it's a lot different now from what we used to see. I mean, there's what looks like a photo of that woman, which really, of course, is an artist's drawing. But if you go back many, many decades, perhaps into the 1800s and early 1900s, when the artists reconstructed these supposed illustrations of early man or whatever, they really had nothing much to go on, and it was just imagination.
Yep.
But this is a little bit more than that. I noticed that they called her a Mesolithic woman.
Yep.
Mesolithic just means middle of the Stone Age.
Yeah, okay.
Now, and really there weren't any such things as Stone Ages. There's no Bronze Age, Stone Age, Iron Age, this sort of thing. That's an artificial description. But apparently they found the skeleton of this woman in a cave in Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with modern techniques, you can really they can extract a fair bit of DNA from these fossils, mm-hmm. and then compare that DNA picture with what we know of the DNA of modern humans. Yep. And they decided that this woman had dark skin and blue eyes. Right? Yeah, very, very interesting. And I mean, I'm sure you can probably work out things like that from DNA evidence. Yep. Because you know the sort of genetic makeup that's going to produce dark skin and blue eyes. Yep. And the thing that interested me was that they found that skeleton in 1988. So yes. We're talking about 40 odd years since they found it, but it's only now that they've really got the technology to build what they think is a reasonable reconstruction of what she looked like. But I was interested to see that they said she belongs to the same ethnic group as a guy they called Cheddar Man, who was found in England. Yeah. Now, bear in mind, this is Belgium, yep. And we've got to go across the channel to England to find Cheddar Man, and he was discovered in 1903. Yes. Right, so it's only now that they've been able to reconstruct what he might have looked like as well. Yep. But anyway, they're supposedly the same ethnic group. Well, that's all very well, but they then decide that because the person probably had dark skin. This is what the evolutionists believe. They believe that humanity evolved in Africa, yep. Right? And we developed through the various stages of half-ape person that they believe it was. Mm-hmm. But something happened, and they have no idea what, that caused all of humanity to up and go and get out of Africa, right? Mm-hmm. Now, they don't have any idea why. Climate change obviously is the one that's always thrown up as the most likely possibility. But yep. What climate change would make all of humanity suddenly leave Africa and disperse all over the world, I don't really know. Mm-hmm. But if we look at our Bibles, we see that there was a dispersion, but it didn't come from Africa. It was just a little bit north of that in the Middle East.
But kind of close when you consider how far away we are.
Yeah. Not too far away at all, because of course, according to the Bible, we are all descended from the one family, Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives, who were the only human inhabitants of the ark.
Yep.
And of course, that came to rest in the Middle East, in the mountains of Turkey. And then, because the people didn't disperse and move all over the world and re-inhabit the world, God had to make them do it. Mm-hmm. And he did that, according to the Bible, about 5 generations after the flood. And he did it by confusing their language, yes, so they couldn't communicate with each other. Yep. Now, the Bible's explanation sounds pretty good to me. I mean, obviously they wouldn't have been able to communicate with each other.
Yep.
But when you think about the genetic makeup of all of these people, that dispersion happened 5 generations after the flood. And God not only confused their language, but he also divided them up into sort of paternity groups, by their fathers. Mm-hmm. Now, when you have a look at what the Bible says, it says that Noah had 16 grandsons. So it sounds pretty reasonable to me that there were probably about 16 original languages that God made, and maybe they were the patriarchs of those grandsons were the patriarchs of the 16 tribal groups. Yep. Now, what the Bible doesn't tell us, it only ever talks in those days anyway, about sons and grandsons and things like that. It doesn't make too much of a mention of daughters. Yep. But you can presume that as well as 16 grandsons, Noah might have had 16 granddaughters as well. Mm-hmm. And bear in mind that in that particular generation, which was really the second generation after the flood, they were all first cousins. Yep. But because they spoke the same language, they were all free to intermarry and mix all together. And about 3 generations later, that's when the dispersion occurred. Yep. So we can presume that they all had very, very mixed genetics, and people just moved out all over the earth. And it's then because of the climatic conditions as to where they went. Yep. Then we started getting the differences in skin colour and other genetic things as well, because the people who went to the more northern areas, where it was a lot colder and where they experienced the ice age, they had to rug up quite considerably because it was so cold. Yep. And people with lighter coloured skin would have thrived better because they were able to produce their vitamin D with only minimal amounts of sunlight. Mm-hmm. Whereas the people who migrated to equatorial regions, a dark skin was beneficial to them because the excessive sunlight might have produced a lot of skin cancers. Mm-hmm. So the lighter skinned people wouldn't have done so well in those areas. So it all makes good sense. And when you look at the genetics of all the ethnic groups throughout the world, we're all very, very similar. Yep. We might have different skin colours, but the differences are really only skin deep. They don't go very far at all. But really, that was a fascinating story, and I thought
it's like a family. They end up with different, facial features, and you can see it in, different members of one family. I guess if one family moved to I guess if they lived on the equator, and that family was darker, they just kept their whole family groups and their ancestors would be darker skinned in the same way.
That's right. But we are all the same race, the human race, and of course one of the things that really has damaged humanity tremendously was the idea of evolution, as Darwin put it out, because Darwin, of course, was a white European, and in his travels, what he saw was dark-skinned people living, in his eyes, a fairly primitive existence, hunter-gatherers and that sort of thing, and that really gave rise to a tremendous amount of racism in the late 1800s. Darwin published his book in 1859. And it was after that racism really got a great foothold in the world. And if we look at the history of Australia, that's when it really started to kick off. The bad treatment of the Aboriginal people really came about more in the late 1800s. If you think about the early explorers like Matthew Flinders, who were much earlier than that, they had a great relationship with the Aboriginal people. There wasn't anything like the racist problems that occurred after Darwin published his book. Yep. So really, the evolutionists have done great damage to the world, and although they idolised Darwin as a hero, he really was responsible for a lot of the damage that we have seen going on, particularly in the racism in the whole world. Yeah.
You are on 94.9. If you have any questions for Dr. John, please send them through. Just text or SMS 0401 949 949. You are on Rima 94.9. It's 26 past 4. We'll be back shortly. That was Whiteheart with Unchained. You're on 94.9. It is 4:39. We're with Dr. John from Creation Ministries International. And this afternoon we've been talking about a news story that hit many, stacks of publications where they've quite literally created images and actually full models, busts of a Stone Age woman. I'm looking at her right now. And interestingly, Dr. John, they say that they use DNA to get all the information to work out what she looks like somebody that I could quite literally go into Market Town right now, or rather, I don't know, one of the shopping centres, Market Town's been closed for a long time. But yeah, I could just walk down the street in West Gosford and I could see this woman walking the other way. She looks fairly normal. That doesn't look like anything out of the ordinary. It doesn't look like there hasn't been any evolution since then, obviously. And the fact that they can actually tell you her age, does that come from DNA?
No, you can't get DNA from age, but you can get a bit of an idea from bone structure. But I think it's fascinating that they related her to the same ethnic group as the bloke in England that they call Cheddar Man. Yep. And of course they make a big deal about them being Stone Age and living in caves and all this sort of stuff. And we've been conditioned to have this idea of primitive people living in caves. But caves were produced by the flood. Caves are pretty much sandstone. Yep. And as people dispersed after God confounded their languages, why wouldn't you live in caves? Because they were ready-made shelters. You didn't have to build them. Yep. And not only were they ready-made shelters, they were reasonably easy to defend if you had to defend them from marauding animals or other people or whatever. And of course, the way they work out what their diet was, the things that were left on the floor of the cave, like animal bones and shells and all this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so they can work out that they ate shellfish and they ate certain types of animals, as you might expect. Yep. So there's really nothing primitive about it. And we have this idea that we are so much more advanced. But we're not. We're still people just like they were.
Yep.
And all of the so-called technological advancement that we have now, it's just discovery built upon discovery, built upon discovery, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it took us a fair while to learn how to fly in aeroplanes. It was 1903 that the Wright brothers first flew. Well, there's a big jump from what they flew at Kitty Hawk to what we now fly in. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but that was a progressive development over time.
Yep.
You know, and it doesn't mean that we're any smarter than these people. It's
Yep.
just that we're technologically more advanced, but certainly no smarter. They were pretty smart people.
And I guess if you look at homes, like how many people right now listening to this program live in homes that are over 100 years old, yet there were a lot of homes back then, but those homes have been pulled down or have fallen down. Even if these people lived in wooden houses back then, you wouldn't know it. You'd only find the ones that were in caves because the caves sort of have stayed around, whereas their houses would have fallen down.
That's right. They were pretty solid. But I was also fascinated by the things that they decided that they ate, you know, because of the bones and the shellfish. And, of course, that took me on to another very, very interesting article that was in the Creation magazine. Yep. When we're talking about foodstuffs, the article says that it looks as though some of the most popular cheeses that we eat are about to become extinct. I mean, sounds amazing, doesn't it? But what they're talking about is the soft cheeses like brie and camembert and Roquefort and all of these things that have come out of Europe, and particularly, I suppose, from the French experiments with culinary things. But in the old days, when we didn't have such commercialisation, they made their brie and their other soft cheeses using various moulds.
Mm-hmm.
But with commercialisation, you then had to produce a very, very consistent product.
Mm-hmm.
And so they started...
They added plastic.
Sorry?
They added plastic.
No, they didn't.
Oh, okay. It tastes like it, some of them, seriously.
Yeah. But some of these good French cheeses are a bit not quite as plastic as you might think,
No,
Mick.
that's right, yes.
But yeah, anyway, they had to develop moulds that were very, very consistent. So they had to get a genetically consistent mould so that the cheese turned out the same, because people would buy a particular brand. Anyway, it turns out that moulds have to reproduce by spores, mm-hmm. but the more concentrated they were on the one type of mould, with genetic mutations over time, those moulds weren't quite so good, and so it looked as though the cheeses could not be produced. So what they've had to do is introduce slightly different moulds to bring back the genetic mixture.
Wow.
So that the cheeses are not going to become obsolete or extinct.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's just like we've spoken about so many times on this program about how when you get mutations and genetic change, it's all downhill. It's never uphill. You know, it's never consistent with evolution. And I mean, we've talked about that many times with dogs, and how, you know, the more pedigreed the dogs, the more concentrated the problems,
yep.
and the more difficulties you have with the various pedigreed dogs.
Yep.
And as I've mentioned on previous occasions, you know, dogs like pugs and bulldogs and so on, they all have to be born by caesarean because they can't be born naturally. And all of the other pedigreed dogs have got their own problems. I mean, Cavalier King Charles Spaniels are prone to fits because their brains are bigger than their brain case. And so the modern world has got around that, just like the cheesemakers, they introduce slightly different moulds. Well, now you cross the various breeds. So we've got labradoodles and cockadoodles and spandoodles and all of this sort of thing, which mixes up the genetics. So you get rid of some of the problems because you introduce new genes. But it only underlines the fact that if you just concentrate things and man interferes and so on, all you get is downhill progression. You don't get uphill progression. So the bottom line is evolution is impossible. This is the sort of thing that we do focus on in Creation Ministries, to get across to people who've been brainwashed with the idea that evolution makes scientific sense. Doesn't make any scientific sense. It's very obvious from what you believe, what you see scientifically, that it is impossible. It goes the wrong way. The train is going backwards instead of forwards.
Absolutely. Oh, Dr. John, another great week. And I've got to say thank you very much for coming in. We'll see you again next week, I believe.
Yes, you will, Mick, and look forward to that too. And anything you come across like that Stone Age woman, send it out to me and we'll talk about it.
Absolutely. You are on 94.9. Hey, if you have any questions for Dr. John next week, please send them through to our text line 0401 949 949. Coming up next, we've got Emerson and Zach Williams. Get behind me.